Well, hey everybody, I'm Nick and welcome to the second episode of Sci-Finatics Live for 2025. And as always, we have a fantastic panel of Star Trek experts to chat everything that's going on in the world of Star Trek. It is my absolute pleasure to have two fine gentlemen with us today who it's their first time guesting on the channel. First off, I would like to welcome from the Tachyon Pulse Podcast and also Sci-Trek, I would like to welcome Jay. Welcome, Jay, to the show.
Howdy doody.
And also from another very fine Star Trek and sci-fi based YouTube channel, I'd like to welcome Mike from Sci-Fi and More. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Thank you all. I appreciate it greatly.
And as always, my fellow Sci-Fanatic in crime, David, joins us. As always, welcome, David.
Hey, everyone. And given it's Mike and Jay's first time, they've broken their Sci-Fanatics virginity, they can perhaps have a cigarette later on.
I was just saying before in the lead up, I obviously missed the memo to shave my head for this episode. So I'm sorry I didn't get the memo to do that. Apologies, guys. So we've got a lot of cool stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk about some stuff to do with Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Obviously, that's the next Star Trek show coming to our screens this year. We've got a little bit of news and a bit of information to talk about regarding some news in terms of some behind the scenesy sort of stuff in terms of the acquisition that's going on between Skydance and Paramount and everything, and maybe some reasons behind why things seem to be taking a long time for Strange New Worlds getting to our TV screens. We have a bit of a talk about some of the episodes that we're likely to see in season 3 and a few other bits and pieces about Starfleet Academy and other general Star Trek news that's been going on over the last few weeks and months and so forth. So to start things off, I would like to let's call this first a bit of a game show like intro, perhaps. This new segment, which I'm going to call "When the Are We Getting Strange New Worlds?" This has been a question on our minds for quite some time because, let's face it, by now we normally would have had certainly a trailer, certainly a air date announcement as to when we're going to be getting Strange New Worlds, but it eludes us. We haven't heard a thing. Now, we've been hearing a little bit of news lately about things maybe taking a little longer due to perhaps the Skydance acquisition of Paramount, things that's going on there. And obviously more recently, some news about some delays because of reshoots that are going on, perhaps influenced a little bit by the new change of government in the US. Jay, you did a video on this yesterday on your channel, and you seem to have some sources or whatever lurking around in the background about the fact that maybe some of the content in season 3 that was shot over a year ago by the standards of perhaps the new government maybe being perceived as perhaps a little bit too much on the woke side, and maybe they're having to do some little adjustments. Tell us a little bit about what you know on that.
So I was told a little while ago that actually there were some reshoots done sort of immediately after Academy wrapped, but a couple of weeks before Strange New World officially season 4 started filming. And I was told they weren't major. They were some quite minor tweaks, but it did obviously delay season 4 coming out, because then they've basically got to edit those bits into what they filmed and have been in post-production for over a year. Post-production normally on Star Trek takes 8 to 12 months. I think we're about 13 or 14 months now. So it is a little bit of delay. I was basically told it was because it was considered, there were some scenes that were considered a little bit too woke, and they were trying to tone it down considering the political landscape that we now find ourselves in. I've actually had a little bit more information since I did that video, though, from somebody that actually works on the production team, and they said they were briefed and they did some changes, and it was basically because some of the scenes were a bit of a critique or a commentary on some quite conservative values. and one or two scenes maybe even didn't make unsubtle jabs towards Trump directly.
Right.
In
Okay.
a Star Trek-y sort of way. And it was decided that considering the current situation, that maybe those scenes should be toned down. I mean, as the FCC, new head of the FCC has not been subtle in his plans to basically say, look, we will block the Paramount Skydance merger if politically we don't agree with some things that you're doing. He directly said, look, we want to get rid of DEI policies. We want to get rid of sort of a lot of woke agenda. So it seems that Paramount have sort of noticed that and gone, maybe we should tone this back a bit and not antagonize the fella that's actually could cripple our business. So,
right.
Which I don't know about you
Interesting.
guys. I have never heard of any of this happening before in my life.
No. This is a first, I think, that government is creatively influencing the creative direction of television shows. Because I obviously have heard things that they've put. They've put the big black marker through things that you wouldn't expect them to do. Like, for example, was it the bomber that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, the Enola Gay, because it had the word gay in it? They removed it from. It's like, really, like.
The government, the parliament that was constant about word police and how they were getting cancel culture and stuff have now gone and deleted. But they were deleting words like woman, sex.
Right. This sounds like some AI bot was doing this, without somebody actually in control of it. So yeah, I mean, obviously, it kind of surprises me a little bit because, let's face it, I think Strange New Worlds has been quite reasonable in its tackling of diverse subjects and so forth. I don't recall watching Strange New Worlds and thinking that they're going too far or pushing things a bit too much. I did think that from time to time in Discovery. I think Discovery tended to get a little bit more soapboxy about those sort of issues than Strange New Worlds does. But that does surprise me that they've had to tone it down, because I thought, Strange New Worlds generally, I think, has been pretty, in the past, quite reasonable on those sorts of topics.
I think
I
think it's not just about things that are sort of like directly. You've also got to consider from this administration things that they just might think is. So, I mean, they love to go through. I think it sounds like Paramount went through as a fine-tooth comb and just went, yeah, that might annoy them. So just let's maybe edit that. So it's not even just anything that's directly woke or directly. It's just anything they might even think is not too much.
Yeah. So let's not rock the boat. Let's just let's err on the side of caution. Anything that's going to potentially upset the merger, let's just get it right out the window. Yeah.
What's interesting,
David, Mike. Well, go on, Mike. Yeah, sure.
I was going to say, what's kind of interesting is if you look at the history of Star Trek, going all the way back to TOS, right? To kind of build on something that Jay said, is they've always kind of taken from political issues or what's going on in the world at the moment, and they build a great story around it. And I think that's one thing with Strange New Worlds. I love the direction that show goes in, because they do the same thing. They reutilize that old idea, that philosophy, and they build a good story around current issues that are happening around us. Now, do I think government should be in my Star Trek? I don't, but I do like the way they've used it historically, and even in Strange New Worlds, how they use it to genuinely develop a pretty good story for the most part.
Yeah. And look, let's face it, Star Trek's always been, a little bit woke. It's been always championed diversity, which is, part of the whole, infinite diversity and infinite combinations kind of philosophy that it's had. So I think that's that's part of Star Trek.
You're gonna get that Star Trek's always been woke. You're gonna get.
I'm not saying it's always been woke, but it's always. I mean, obviously back in the '60s, putting an Asian man and a black woman on the bridge of the starship, was considered, quite progressive. So it's always, championed those kind of elements, but I think it's how it's handled. If it's handled in a respectful way, if it's handled in a way that doesn't get too soapboxy, that that includes everybody, but doesn't feel the necessity to sort of jump up and down on the soapbox, then that's great. I think that's perfectly fine, but yeah, I mean, David, what do you think about this having to tone back and reshoot scenes for Strange New Worlds on the basis of this?
Yeah, I think probably a few things. I think one is I'm just wondering what are some of the scenes where maybe we had a big Cheezel or Cheestos alien Trump or something that might have had to have been removed from the series. He could have been the villain of season 3. I don't know what that creature would be called. But I think, look, it's sort of like the pendulum's gravitated between extremes, and I think it needs to sort of sit in the middle of the dial a bit. And I think, you said it, Mike. Star Trek is often commenting on the current period and the political situations that we have in our daily life. It does this very well, and I think we can't get to a point where the politics is driving that narrative. I mean, that would even be a good story in itself. But I think also, just coming back to the woke element, Jay, I think you sort of said, or you had a guest on one of your podcasts that sort of said the story content sometimes, like the elements of diversity have always been there. That woke agenda, if you want to call it, that woke element has been there, if I want to call it that. But it's just that the storytelling has perhaps come down a little level, which is then revealing this element where it becomes a bit more pronounced, a bit more obvious. And I think that's where people are kind of shitting on the woke elements because of maybe the quality drop in the storytelling.
I think for me, I hate the word woke. It was co-opted by the Conservatives a few years ago, and I hate using it, but we haven't got a choice now. It means what it means. So
W word
with this sort of thing. But for me, woke just basically means a liberal agenda, liberal views, and I consider myself a liberal. And I don't know when being a liberal became a dirty word either, but apparently it has done. But I've always considered myself very liberal in my views. I'm a bit left-wing in some areas. I'm a bit right-wing in other areas. I'm like a normal human being. I don't pigeonhole myself particularly politically. Some areas I'm a bit, but I'm a bit centralist. The thing I had with the commentary when I sort of said Star Trek's always been woke or always been liberal is one of the arguments was Star Trek used to tell us how to, Star Trek used to make us think. Now it tells us how to think, and that's the difference. And I would argue, no, Star Trek's always told us how to think. Because if you actually think about it, the premise of Star Trek, and I don't know what you guys think about this, but the premise of Star Trek is basically that greed, sexism, racism, and all these things are wrong. And that if we enlighten ourselves and grow, that we can be better. You think about the TNG episodes. Remember when the guys from the 20th century were thinking? The guy was he was really worried about.
Oh, was it last episode of season 1? I think it was, wasn't it?
He was worried about his stock portfolio,
stock market, and things.
Yeah.
Slapped him.
Wasn't it like a country and western singer or something in that episode? Or I can't remember his name. I can't remember his name. A southern guy, yeah.
Yeah, but Picard basically told him off. And he said, we don't do that anymore. We're better than that now. So I mean, it was not subtle. And it was basically saying the way we live today is wrong and we need to do better. That is telling you how to think for me. I mean, maybe I think the difference between older Trek, TNG, Voyager is I think it's not written as well now. And I think 10 episodes, the way they do it now, I think is... I think it maybe focuses our attention on the episodes a bit more, because with TNG, when you get 22, 24 episodes, whatever it was, if there was a bad episode, you're like, it's all right, because next week's episode will be better. And you forget the bad episodes, and you just remember the ones that really caught your attention, sort of thing. But now, because they're so boiled down, when you have a musical episode, it really annoys you.
If you don't like musicals, yeah. Yes.
So I think it's more to do with that than all of a sudden being sort of woke. And I appreciate there's certain agendas that people on the Conservative and the left don't like. that are being championed, and I do think Hollywood has had an overcorrection since everybody realized it was kind of racist and sexist for like a century, and they all sort of went, oh, now maybe we should try not to be, and I think they overcorrected a great deal. But yeah, it's like I think it's more about not very good writing rather than actually changing a philosophy, which I don't think they've really done.
Jay, you said something that kind of jumped out at me, and I just want to build on it real quick. The how to think and all that. I like to think that Gene Roddenberry, when Star Trek first came out in the 60s, right? He gave us a vision of a utopian future. More than that, he showed us what was possible for humanity, right? And that is extended throughout, every subsequent series that's come from it. And I kind of feel like, with Discovery, once we get to Discovery, now going into the 32nd century, to basically a decimated, Starfleet, decimated Federation, that's setting the groundwork to now get back to the Roddenberry vision a little bit. To now they can build this utopian, and maybe we can see a little bit of how they're going to build this utopian type of belief. But to your point, yeah, I think he also
providing we have no more crying Kelpian children,
right?
Give them a pacifier.
The galaxy.
Give the boy.
I just think that that positive vision. I think that positive vision is going to come back stronger. I think it's going to come back real strong in Starfleet Academy.
I hope so. I hope so. But before we get into Starfleet Academy, let's have a bit of a speculate on when we think we might be getting Strange New Worlds. Because here's a little graph I made up of different Star Trek series going back to the first season of Discovery to present day, and this is the month that they premiered in. So obviously we had Discovery season 2 and Picard season 1 in January. Picard season 3 aired in February. Picard season 2 aired in March. Discovery season 5 in April. Strange New Worlds has always aired in the middle of the year in May or June for season 1 or 2. So this could be potentially telling if there's a little bit of a delay going on with things, and they've got to re-edit a couple of scenes into episodes. Maybe we might be looking at the same sort of months for season 3 if seasons 1 and 2 have hit in May and June, because obviously we're about to get into April in the next day or two. So it's probably going to be too soon, I reckon, for April. But I think we might be in for a chance for May. Obviously, Lower Decks. Every single season of Lower Decks aired in August, except for season 4 and 5, which were in September and October. And then obviously Discovery was in September for season 1, and then season 4 aired in November. But we've never had a Star Trek series start in December for obvious reasons, I guess, holiday season and all that. Based on this and current news and everything, what do you guys reckon? When do you think best educated guess we're going to be getting Strange New Worlds season 3?
Well, I just in kind of reviewing certain articles here and there, the recurring theme that keeps coming up is to be released in spring to summer of this year. But it doesn't go into anything beyond that. Now, if everything that Jay has brought up is actually coming to fruition and the merger and all that, I would speculate that it would probably be closer to October.
Another 6 months.
Okay.
I hope not. I hope I'm wrong. I'm really looking forward to like a spring summer release, but
yeah.
But there seems to be a lot of moving parts going on with this, so who knows?
Jay, do you know whether they've done these reshoots or whether they're in the middle of doing them?
No, they were done.
They're done. Okay.
I found out. Yeah, it was basically done before season 4 started. So
and season 4 started shooting in February.
No, it was a couple of weeks ago.
I think.
Yeah, a couple of weeks
ago. Mm-hmm. So it was like the start of March. Okay. So based on that, if you, I guess, think they're going to need at least, I would say, 3 months to cut in, scenes and all that sort of stuff. I would imagine. I guess it depends on whether they have to redo visual effects because of it or not. That would be the time killer. If it's just inserting a few lines of dialogue, and doesn't require any visual effects work, it could happen within
dialogue. Yeah, it's nothing.
It's dialogue-y?
I've been told
they
weren't major. Apparently, they only took 2 or 3 weeks to get done. So,
okay.
I mean, that, on this sort of says that's nothing, really. I think end of April, early May. And I think we'll only get about 2 weeks.
I would be very surprised if it hit in April. I think if it was going to air in April, we would have heard something by now. I think going by season 1. I mean, the thing is, season 1 of Strange New Worlds aired in May because Picard, I think it was season 2 of Picard, started in March, and then Picard season 2 ran from March, finished in May, and then there was like a 1 week break, and then they just kept rolling into
back.
Strange New Worlds, because obviously, as we all know, with the streaming platforms, they got to keep you hooked in because they don't want people to unsubscribe. So they got to keep shows rolling along so that people don't go, oh, I've finished watching that show, I'll unsubscribe now. I don't want to watch anything else. But if they keep the shows rolling around, people keep their subscriptions going. But that being said, we haven't had anything like that this year. Obviously, the only Star Trek content we've had this year is Section 31. And I honestly would have thought by now, because let's face it, Section 31 wasn't well received by the audience, generally speaking.
What?
That they would be looking to, I guess, reassure fans or to regain regain a little bit of regain some brownie points, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, what I was told was the plan was the trailer was supposed to drop when Section 31 dropped. That's when it was supposed to happen. But the reshoots, they decided, let's not drop a trailer just in case we then drop a trailer with something we then change. So let's do the reshoots. Let's figure out what we're doing, and then we'll drop a trailer. But I actually think they will probably drop a trailer 2 to 3 weeks before it drops on streaming. Remember, they don't have to do. It's not like seasons on a network where you've got to start. There's a routine to it. A schedule to it. Nowadays, they can do what they want, and I don't think.
Some shows, like I remember Discovery, when they dropped trailers for Discovery, it was like 6 months out from when the actual season aired. Like I remember getting and talking about stuff that was in the trailer, and like 6 to 8 months later was the first episode. So
how weird is it that
I'm actually
we had like 3-minute bits dropped before a trailer? I don't think that's normal either. Normally we might get something like a Comic-Con or something. And
they normally do a sneak peek scene thing at Comic-Con where they give you a 2-minute scene. But yes, normally that normally happens after a trailer. Normally they drop the trailer first, then they drop a sneak peek scene.
It's normally something they do just before, or is it, like I say, maybe it's a Comic-Con thing, but it's the whole thing is strange. But
yeah,
that's the best way
David
to put it.
Yeah, David and Mike, when do you reckon? When do you think we might get Strange New World season 3 based on this?
Mike said October. Yeah,
I did.
Mike said October. David?
Yeah, I'd say Q3. I'm probably going to go in between. I think they're probably going to sort of balance things out a little bit. So if we get Academy early in 2026, let the dust settle over. I was going to say, Section 31. So probably, I think that Q3, that's summer, that sort of period. I think that's probably when it's likely to drop. They won't need a lot of time, as you said, Jay, to run those changes through if they're fairly minimal. But I think it would be a bit ambitious to get that in April, May. But and it has been unusual getting those bits that we've got in place, I guess, of a trailer.
Do you think the disaster that was Section 31 may have had. I mean, because I know about the reshoots. I know that will have caused some delay. I know that the trailers. I don't know why they didn't drop the trailer necessarily. I'm speculating a bit, but do you think Section 31 could have actually had an impact on this? Because I'm thinking. I mean, I know from the people I speak to, I know Skydance were furious when they sort of got to see the final thing of Section 31. They were like, "We've got Michelle Yeoh, top of her game in a movie, and you do that." So apparently they were not impressed. So,
yeah, you know, Academy Award winner Michelle Yeoh, right?
Yeah.
But you know, let's be honest. Let's not bust on my Section 31. I thought it was fantastic. Oh, am I serious? No, not at all. It was. Oh my god! I went into that with some expectation.
My finger was hovering over the kick from stream button.
My biggest thing is, okay, it's Section 31. It should have been different. It shouldn't have been like Star Trek, right? Because Section 31 as an organization is different, right? That's the whole premise. But to see a movie that was clearly like 4 episodes strung together, and you know the timeline wasn't, I don't know. It should have never been called Star Trek. If it would have been called something else, I'd have probably bought into it more, you know. But because they called it Star Trek, and I gave it a fair shot, I really, really tried to like that one.
Really tried.
I did. I put my best foot forward on that one.
Because we hold it to a higher standard. I think, you know, because it has that Star Trek name attached to it, we hold it to a higher standard. If it just had been some generic sci-fi movie about a space Mission Impossible team of agents who thwart some sort of space adventure, as it was, I think we would have gone, oh yeah, okay, you know. But I think the second it has that Star Trek badge on it, there are certain levels of expectation that everybody thinks, okay, well, it's, you know, it's got to have this and it's got to have that, you know, because if it doesn't, then it's not Star Trek, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I'm glad it happened though, because I guess it also needed to have a message sent back to the people producing Star Trek these days that, you know, it didn't. This really just hit the bottom of the boat, and hopefully they'll take more, I guess, input from the fans. You know, I mean that's probably a bit of wishful thinking, but hopefully this might push Legacy a little bit further along in the queue and stuff like that to say, let's give the people what they want. You know, not.
Well, I think Jay.
Too out
I think Yeah, Jay was saying, I think that Legacy was one of the provisos for Kurtzman and Secret Hideout to keep their contract or something to that effect.
Yeah, apparently they've basically been told they've got to pitch sort of 3 projects by the end of the year. And one of those is, what are you doing with Legacy? And they said that doesn't have to necessarily be what Metalis, but what are you doing with it? And we know they've already kind of tried, because they have approached Jerry Ryan to come back in a role, which she declined.
And she said, "Nah, it's not what I want to do." She said, "It's not the Terry Trek." Yeah.
So it does seem that they're trying to figure it out. But I was always told, going back to when the Picard season 3 dropped, that Legacy was always the plan. It was something Paramount were really pushing before the sale actually went through. And the idea was always they were going to do what they did with Strange New Worlds. That, you know, they did season 2 Discovery, and then they sort of made out that, oh, will we or won't we? And then, oh, the fans want us to do, so, you know, we've listened to you. But actually, it was always the plan. They were never going to do Discovery season 2 and then not run with Strange Worlds. So it was always the plan. They were going to wait about 2 years, and then they were going to run with Legacy. But then the sale and then everything else. Basically, Skydance is still coming in and going, look, the fans want Legacy. So how do we do that? How do we leave this? You've left this massive thread at the end of Picard season 3. How are you going to do it? And that is something they've been told they've got to pitch something, and it's got to be Legacy. So, or whatever they come up with as an idea for what would fit in that box. It's basically got to be 7 of 9 on the Enterprise G.
Enterprise G with
everything else.
Yeah, with the people we saw at the end of Picard season 3. Yeah,
I think you could even get rid, because 2 or 3 years have gone by. You could get rid of almost all of the crew except for 7, and I actually don't think fans in the slightest.
Yeah,
Raffi's not there.
Yeah,
but as long as 7 of 9,
no big deal. Yeah, exactly.
And
I would love to see Legacy come to fruition. I really would love to see Legacy happen. Yeah, honestly, I mean, the best cliffhanger you could have asked for happened at the end of, Star Trek Picard season 3. it left you wanting more. I mean, they embedded
Mm.
that, it's like, hey,
Yeah.
this is what fans will want. And
Yeah.
sure enough,
Mm.
look at all the, the fan mail and fan messaging that's come out like, hey, bring us Legacy, bring us Legacy. It really, it should happen. And instead we get Section 31.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
the petition that they launched or whatever to get Legacy made has got 3 times as many signatures on it that the similar petition that got Strange New Worlds greenlit. So they greenlit Strange New Worlds after like 30,000 signature petition, but I think Legacy's probably got somewhere in the vicinity of 90,000 signatures, and they're just ignoring it. Well, I mean, obviously they've lost Natalis to that Vision series for Disney Plus now.
But do you actually think for a second that Paramount or Secret Hideout or whatever would have let Natalis set that up if there wasn't an intention to do a Legacy TV series? They wouldn't have let him do it. It would have been sort of like, you're setting up what? We're gonna they'd have known every single way of what the idea was to do the Legacy series. So I mean, anybody says to me, they goes, well, no, come on, it was never the plan. They've got no, it was. It's just sale has changed everything, and now we're in a limbo period at the moment because Paramount aren't going to greenlight anything new until the Skydance deal goes through, because they don't know what Skydance want, sort of thing. Well, they kind of do, but it's informally conversations and stuff. Skydance can't dictate the sales fine, but so that's why they're rushing to get Strange New Worlds done, and why they're rushing to get 2 seasons of Academy done, because they're not allowed to do anything else. So they were always going to do Legacy, and there is also a big problem that Secret Hideout have. If they start doing Legacy, Skydance are kind of stuck with Secret Hideout then, if they want Legacy to continue, because there's a weird thing with the IP that even though Paramount own the Star Trek IP, anything that Secret Hideout sort of do that's original with it, they kind of own. So if they start doing Legacy, you're kind of stuck with Secret Hideout. So my understanding is they've very early on said we either need to decide what we're doing with Secret Hideout when their contract's up next year before we do anything with Legacy, because we don't necessarily want to be stuck with these people.
That's a great point, Jay, because I was going to say on that one, like, would it make sense to sort of, do Legacy or get your foot in the queue now with that, with Secret Hideout, and then, as you say, get sort of stuck with that? Or was it best to sort of wait maybe a year or two, and then maybe the planets align with Terry Matalis and then Jerry Ryan, and perhaps we get a better Legacy if we wait a little while? I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's what Matalis has basically said. He came at an interview a little while ago and he says, actually, I think it might be better if we wait 3 or 4 years. And he seems to have an idea of what they could then do with it. Hey, maybe we're on the Enterprise H and we don't have to have the Enterprise G. That would be nice.
Well, when you think about it, we can automatically assume that they've already been out there flying around doing missions for the last 3 years. Because when you think about it, when Strange New Worlds started, it wasn't like they were launching the Enterprise with Pike and crew. Like, they were doing that was like that already kind of essentially established the fact that Pike was on holidays, he was having some time off or whatever, and this is like the second 5-year mission of Pike's Enterprise, because that I think they established that all that stuff that we saw with the Cage and with Pike and was it Vega on the with the
Vina?
the Vina, sorry. On that, so that all happened like in previous things, and obviously we had those short Trek episodes which showed Spock coming on board as an ensign and singing Gilbert and Sullivan with number 1 in the turbo lift, and all. So you kind of already assume this ship has been operating for a good chunk of time, and we're dropping into the story, a few years on, and you could do exactly the same thing with Legacy without issue, I think.
I think one of the things with Legacy that, just to kind of throw an opinion out there, is I really appreciated with Star Trek Picard season 3 that Terry Matalis was the showrunner. I appreciated that from the point of view is he was a fan. He was a fan, and he showed what a fan could do if a fan was a showrunner on a show. So,
Hmm.
if the point to legacy is to wait a couple of years for Terry Matalas to be the showrunner again, potentially, I'm all for it. I'll do the wait, because I think he delivered a quality product in Picard season 3, and I believe that'll just bleed right over into a potential season 1 of Legacy.
I mean, I think Skydance have got a very clear strategy for the couple of people I've got to speak to. And the strategy basically is we will give Secret Hideout a chance to sort of pitch something and see what, we'll give them a chance. We'll let them finish season 4 and 5 of Strange New Worlds. We'll let them do the 2 seasons of Academy.
Mm-hmm.
But next summer or around the new year, we'll make a decision on whether they get a new contract or not. But
you're on notice. It better be good, because if it's not, you're out.
But the general consensus seems to be over at Skydance that they don't want to give him a new contract. They got burned doing the J.J. Abrams movies, and they know Kurtzman well, and they're not keen. But they're willing to give him a chance. That's basically where they're at, and I think that's a very good business.
I think they need to get. I think if they got somebody like Ronald D. Moore as showrunner or EP, that guy was there for the whole, almost from the start of season 3 at least, from Next Generation through DS9 and Voyager. He's been through Star Trek, through all of the Rick Berman era, and I think it would be pretty safe in his hands. And obviously, he's a very experienced showrunner and everything, and I think if he was available,
Warhammer, isn't he? Is it Warhammer or God of War? I always mix those two up. It's God of War, isn't it? He's just took over. He's going to be showing God of War with Amazon. But showrunners and things, they can do more than one show at a time nowadays. Especially when there's like a year between pigging their production nowadays. But also you got people like Brannon Braga, people like that as well. You could bring in, and I think would be brilliant as well. But I mean, the idea seems to be, there seems to be.
Thanks, Chuck.
On your Chuck.
The plan Secret Hideout seems to be promoting is to basically promote Jonathan Frakes and make him the front man for lots of these shows. And I can see where they're coming from with that, because he is Mr. Trek now. He directs most of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely, he is.
And his episodes are always, I think they're always solid episodes. I think the ones he directs, he knows what he's doing.
I think people think the show has to be a writer. It doesn't. I mean, Kevin Feige's done a very good job with Marvel. He's not a writer. Kind of a showrunner.
Kevin Feige really knew his Marvel comics. Though he came in as a comic book fan, and he really knew all the material back to front.
Frakes knows his Trek.
Frakes knows Trek. So I think that'd be a good choice. Obviously, even though we haven't had too much news on Strange New Worlds or whatever, there's a few bits and pieces that came out over the course of the last 12 months, which maybe we'll just have a bit of a chat about and see what everyone's thoughts on that are. Let's start with the announcement a while back that New Zealand actor Rhys Darby, who you guys might know from the HBO comedy series Our Flag Means Death, is going to be on Strange New Worlds. He obviously played a gentleman pirate in that TV series, and just looking at Rhys in his costume here. For Our Flag Means Death, it does spark something in my imagination, and thinking, who does he resemble in costume here in Flag Means Death? Well, of course, he resembles exactly. Trelane.
If they do that, I'm never watching Star Trek again.
So whether that is, it comes to pass or not, but seeing Rhys Darby or whatever with Pike there on the bridge of the Enterprise as a Trelane kind of, whether it be Trelane or whether it be
Like a
one of
Q?
Trelane's family? Because there's always been a little bit of
I tell you what, I think
speculation as to.
I've
That
got
would be
horrible
awesome.
feelings about I've got a
Would you
horrible
buy
feeling
into that,
about
Mike? Would you buy
I
that
would.
for $1?
I would. I absolutely would. Get a harpsichord for him to sit down and play while walking the pike. I'm all for it. I'm all for that.
Jay's not
Joe's
convinced.
going, make it stop, make it stop.
No Secret Hideout think canon is just a bit of a nuisance, but no, you can't do that unless they are going to admit that actually Strange New Worlds isn't Prime Universe, and they can't. We've seen.
Well, you know what they could do.
We know what happened in the original series.
Well, you know what they could do if they did introduce him, let's say, as Trelane, they could answer the question that's been driving around the fandom for a long time, like, is Trelane a Q?
Yeah.
They
Q continuum, yes.
They could go that route, and we might be able to kind of get a more broad answer on that. But that would be. I gotta admit, I'm laughing at that one. I think that would be great if he came.
I think you're right.
I mean, Rhys Darby is a good. I mean, I've watched Our Flagman's Death, and he's very good value in that series. I think he's popped up in a few sort of odd shows over the years. I think he was in an episode of X-Files as an alien or something. I think at one point during the X-Files. Not in reboot, but they came back and did like a couple of seasons of X-Files with David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson after the fact or whatever.
Yeah, I think he was an alien who he was like hibernating or something. Came back all of a sudden, took on a human form, and he became concerned about getting a home mortgage.
Yes.
That's brilliant.
It was a great character for him. I remember that character was hilarious.
He is going to be. He can act a certain way, and he basically is. He's a bit like Jeff Goldblum. He plays Jeff Goldblum. He's like that. So it's going to be a comic.
He's got his shtick, and he does his shtick well. Yeah.
It's still going to be trouble. Oh God. I hate Alex. Sorry.
That's a good point about it could be done in an alternative universe. That could be a way of maybe explaining the Q there. So if they just first encountered them in TNG, this could be a nice way of introducing it, because we haven't had any Q beings in Strange New Worlds yet, have we?
No.
Yeah, they'll make up some sort of nonsense excuse on why
I mean, it's a bit of a difficult ground, because how do you do it in a way that doesn't affect the fact that the first meeting of the Federation with the Q continuum was in Encounter at Farpoint?
Do a Men in Black, just wipe their memory at the end of it.
Yeah, it'd need to be done in a. It'd need to be done in a kind of a way. I mean, they have covered things like this in the past in Strange New Worlds that you go, oh, they did that actually really well, and I totally buy that. Like, for example, in the I can't remember what episode of Strange New Worlds it was, but obviously the fact that one of the first episodes that had Paul Wesley in it as Kirk, there was this thing they had to get around where Kirk said in the Menagerie or whatever it was, that the first time he met Pike was when he had been promoted to fleet captain.
Right.
Implying that that didn't happen until after he passed on the command of the Enterprise to Kirk. But they got around that by having some maneuvers or whatever going on, and Pike was in command of multiple starships, so they kind of temporarily promoted him to fleet captain. Like it was enough so that the part of your brain that fixates on canon, go, oh yeah, okay, like I'll go with that. It was just enough to go, yep, okay, I'll go with that.
Well, we'll
it's canon adjacent.
It always annoys me though that Kirk's not supposed to really know Pike, and it does feel like now they've got Paul Wesley on as Kirk, they have to insert him into as many episodes. It does feel like it's any excuse. It's like Kirk turns up, goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot my wallet on the last time I was here, so I've come back to get it again." And
it's coming to pick it up.
I mean, it's getting it like it's like keys. So it's getting desperate on the different reasons they bring Kirk into it, and I'm just like, they should never have done it. They should have waited until the season 5 and brought Kirk in. why they did it in season.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
did seem a bit soon. It did seem a bit soon. I think it was like, and also I mean, Paul Wesley's a fine actor, but I don't look at Paul Wesley's performance as Kirk in Strange New Worlds and see any glimpses of Shatner in his performance. He's I mean, Shatner's kind of shorter and stocky, and he's obviously delivery, and there's obviously Paul Wesley's considerably taller and sort of skinny and lanky, and I don't look at him and I can quite happily look at Ethan Peck and see Leonard Nimoy in Ethan Peck, but I don't look at Paul Wesley and see William Shatner in him.
No, I'm right there with you. I don't see it either. I mean, I'm glad that okay, Kirk is in the show, but I agree it should have waited, and Paul Wesley, he does a good performance, he does, but he doesn't do like a William Shatner Kirk, and I guess he really shouldn't be expected to do that. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't see it either. I think the casting could have been a little bit better on that point.
The episode where they went back in time and they flitted, and then they ruined Khan, or they changed Khan.
Right.
Tomorrow.
I thought he was great in that.
Yep, tomorrow.
Yeah, that was the first time I thought, actually.
That was actually my favorite episode with Kirk, because really it's detached from everything else, right? So it's kind of a self-contained story, at least for Kirk, right? And I thought, man, what a great episode that you could have introduced Kirk into, that was a good one.
Kirk's a chess genius. Never mentioned it before, but Kirk's a chess genius. Okay, whatever. Yeah.
Another comment from one of my longest serving channel members, Chuck, obviously liking your Balance of Terror review, David.
Hope you're doing well, Chuck.
Another episode that we're going to be getting as part of season 3 of Strange New World is this sort of Hollywood murder mystery episode, which is sort of like a Agatha Christie kind of whodunit, like Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, maybe a bit like the board game Cluedo, or even Knives Out. Which I'm interested to know how they're going to do that. Is it going to be, obviously, because there's no holodeck on board Pike's Enterprise, and that sort of episode would normally be done in Next Generation or something like a Dixon Hill or type holodeck episode. But how that's going to be handled on Strange New Worlds? Does it mean it's just going to be a mystery and that someone's going to be murdered and they have to kind of solve the mystery, or is it going to be everybody wearing 1930s clothes in some mansion in upstate New York set in the 1930s kind of routine or something, what it could be?
You know what it could be? They could almost do it like the episode of Piece of the Action from the original Star Trek series. Go visit the Iotians, right? The imitative aliens that took on the 1920s, 30s, 40s gangster look. I mean, that could be. I'm kind of interested to see how they pull this one off as well. But I mean, that could be an idea.
Yeah.
I mean, all we know about the episode is that Jonathan Frakes that's the episode of the season that he's directing. So obviously that, I think
he directed 7, didn't he? Was it 6 or 7 he's directed? He's directed quite a few this season.
I think normally he doesn't normally direct more than 2 episodes a season, I think he's maybe done in the past 2 episodes a season, but no more.
No, he's directing a lot of Strange New of Academy, so maybe I'm mixing the two.
Yes, maybe, yeah. But yeah, I mean, what do you guys think about an old timey Hollywood murder mystery episode of Strange New World? Is that something that fills you with dread, or does it fill you with that could be interesting?
Go on, David, because I'm going to have a.
I'd like to see some 1960s Miss Marple music, probably a bit old for most of the audience here, but yeah, just check it out on YouTube. It's a great theme, but I'd like to see a bit of that in the episode. Exactly, it was.
I would have. People in the UK, Jay, seem to absolutely love these murder mystery shows. It seems like every single show on your television is a friggin' old fogey in the countryside solving crimes somewhere.
We like murdering people.
That's a great claim to fame.
The British
Jack the Ripper
built an empire on it. we love fight. We do like Agatha Christie style murder mystery stuff, and it's become a genre all on its own. But we also like the gritty, but we don't have quite the glossy murder mysteries like you do in, like something like Castle or something. We don't really have that. I suppose because your genre was more formed on things like what was the thing with it was the most popular show on Sunday night for years and years. Wherever she went, there was a murder. What was it called?
Oh, Murder She Wrote.
Murder She Wrote.
Murder She Wrote. Yours was sort of gone, but ours was more Agatha Christie. That's the way ours sort of went, and everybody copies everything, don't they? But for me, when you've only got 10 episodes, I will accept one quirky episode. Any more than that, and you're going to piss me. Oh, sorry. You're going to annoy me. So that's what annoyed me so much in the last season of Strange New Worlds. We basically had 3 quite quirky episodes. We obviously had that episode that we don't want to talk about because it'll make me injure myself. We had the brilliant crossover episode, which I adored.
Loved it.
Still the funny.
Loved it.
Star Trek. And then the first episode with Spock in charge was kind of quirky and had some silly bits in it. So I will accept one quirky episode. The rest of them I would like to be Star Trek, please. So we know we're getting the Vulcan episode, which is going to be funny, quirky episode. We know we're getting the episode with Trelawney now because that's what they're going to do.
Yes.
And
with the high hair, with Pike with the super high hair.
Yeah,
that is super high.
It's like, imagine the gel in that.
There's a couple of jars at least in that.
It's Vulcan gel. No nonsense,
Vulcan gel, hair gel, yeah.
But we've got to we're going to be putting up with at least 3 or 4 quirky episodes again, which will probably, I just think, one, and then give us Star Trek. But they've got this theory, thing, and they're not wrong. But that Star Trek can have almost any genre. You can do almost anything with the Star Trek episode as long as it's still sci-fi. And we get romantic episodes. We get murder. We've had murder mysteries in Star Trek before, and TNG and stuff. And we've got action episodes and romantic episodes, and ghosts humping Dr. Crusher and stuff. And we've had all those things. But when there's only 10 episodes, I think they need to focus on actually being Star Trek first, and then maybe throw in. For me, what they should have done was made the season finale of season 2 a double episode, and actually build up to the season finale, and kept the High School Musical episode for like a Christmas special, and done it as an 11.
Oh, there you go. That's a great idea. Yeah,
released it a couple of months after as like hey, look at a gift, and I wouldn't have minded. I still would have hated it. But I wouldn't have been vengeful towards it.
No, that would have been a really great idea.
Just a quick shout out. Sorry, just interrupt you there, Mike. Just do a quick shout out to Alexis. Thank you so much for the super thanks. Much appreciated, Alexis. And yes, we do have a very awesome crew today. Much appreciated. Sorry, Mike, go on.
No, I was going to say, it's Bald Guys Day here on Sci-Finatic.
We're just damn sexy.
I'll just have to like this.
Don't make me look at me. I'm too pretty.
You are very pretty.
Glasses, a bit tubby.
Well, what I was going to say is, kind of like I like what Jay had to say about the, treating that musical more in like a holiday style. If they would have done that, that would have been great. Because Marvel Comics and the MCU, they did something similar to that, with the whole Kevin Bacon being abducted for the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. I mean, that was its own standalone, encapsulated, no connectivity to anything. It was just a fun holiday episode. So yeah, that would have been a great idea, Jay.
If only I had Alex Kurtzman's phone number. He wouldn't want me to have his phone number.
Yeah, you want me to get it for you? I know a guy.
No, he wouldn't want.
The other thing we know with this coming as part of season 3 of Strange New Worlds is we obviously know that we're going to be getting some information about Dr. Kirby. Obviously, at the end of last season, we saw Chapel go off to do the residency or whatever was under Dr. Kirby, and we obviously know that actor Cillian Murphy I've forgotten his name. Cillian O'Sullivan or this fine looking chap on the screen right now.
Cillian, ugly bastard. Come they go with a bit more
yes. Which obviously would probably lend itself, I think, to some interesting storytelling. I mean, we've had quite a few episodes of Strange New Worlds, it feels like, where it's, dipping into the whole Spock and Chapel, will they, won't they kind of romance on again, off again kind of scenario. And this obviously is just going to throw an extra spanner into the works for that dynamic. Is this something you guys are looking forward to for season 3 to see how this kind of plays out? Or just like, whatever, don't really care?
Yeah, it's a hit or miss for me. It's not going to impact any kind of, like story for me. That's fine. We knew she had this, from the original episodes, the original series. It's not. I'm more interested to figure out, more about the Gorn. That's really kind of where I'm at. That seems exciting.
I like the Gorn.
I am loving what they're doing with the Gorn. Sure, I've seen it before in the movie Alien, but I'm loving it.
I'm with Mike on that. Yeah.
We have seen the Gorn sat in the audience in the Star Trek movies. They become a member of the Federation. How does it go from the Gorn that they've created?
Okay, I've got a theory behind this. I've got a theory on this one, and I think it could potentially work as an explanation. You do an episode that establishes that there is a world out there. I forget the name of the planet that Arena was set on, where literally what happens to Gorn when they get to be like, 200 years old, they're ancient, they're decrepit, rather than die, they just dump them on this planet, and they're like, it's like the retirement home for the Gorn. So they basically, the Gorn that Kirk fought in Arena was like a geriatric, the equivalent of he's like 110 years old. He's slow. He's, he feels the chill. So they got to put the little, little thing on it, the little vest on him and everything. And you establish that as the Gorn age, they end up being more like, somewhere more closer to what Kirk fought in Arena.
When humans get old, over. When the Gorn got old,
the green version of Barney.
Stand up. Exactly. But that was my thinking is that this particular Gorn that he fought was just like the equivalent of like a 98-year-old in a nursing home kind of Gorn.
I'm loving these comments in the chat. I'm loving these comments in the chat. Gorn to be wild, children of the Gorn, Gorn with the wind, Gorn on the cob. I mean, seriously, it's cracking me up.
Yeah, they reach a point where they get older and they get put on the Vasquez rock planet, where their tail's already fallen off. They don't have it anymore.
Would you buy that as an explanation, or is it like nah?
I've already bought it twice. Haven't you seen my donation?
You know what? They're Northerners. They're Northerners. Yeah.
Oh, that's They're
from the north.
Yes.
And then, how do we explain that they're no longer aggressive, egg-laying alien monsters? HRT treatment or something? They're going to have to have a shot of hypospace. Oh, I can't write down. Thank you.
That's yes. A bit like that Enterprise episode where they explained the Klingons with the bumpy foreheads versus the Klingons who don't have bumpy foreheads, like we saw in original series.
And we don't.
Obviously, obviously, Worf's explanation in Trials and Tribulations or whatever was a far more fun way of doing it without having to kind of get into the science of it.
Yeah.
Right.
But, you know,
the
I
no
love that that's
explanation.
become-
Explanation.
Yeah. And I love that they mirrored that, because that was one of my favourite lines from War is we don't talk about this. But then they mirrored it in the final episode of Picard season 3 when they're joking about what happened to the Enterprise E. And he goes, "That was not my fault."
Right.
I love how they mirrored the same thing. I love that line.
yeah.
Fantastic.
Indeed. We also know in season 3 of Strange New Worlds that obviously Martin Quinn is part of the regular cast. He'll be in the cast equally as every other cast member, not just like one character that kind of pops in for one cameo and disappears for 3 episodes and then comes back. It seems like he's going to be a regular in the show, which I think is good. I think his portrayal of Scotty was definitely entertaining at the end of the last season. I'm not quite sure how they explain the fact that he's
His fingers.
somewhere in the vicinity of 15 years younger than Kirk. And obviously in the original series, Scotty was about 10 to 15 years older than Kirk. That kind of seems like a little bit of a misstep in continuity. Because you think about it, like James Doohan in the original series was like, I think William Shatner was like 33 or 34 and James Doohan was like 45, 46 or something. And like Martin Quinn is like 27 or something. And Paul Wesley is like 42.
We ran out of moisturizer or something, perhaps.
So I don't know. Maybe are they going to have an episode where Scotty gets marooned on some planet or goes through some time vortex where time passes in a different way than the normal universe, and when he comes out of the portal, he's like aged 10 years or something? Or
well, Scotty works as an engineer. He's around radiation and hazardous materials. That's going to age you up a little bit.
Bit of asbestos,
So by the time we get to the original series, it's all going to make sense.
He's going to have a bit of a green glow about him,
At least.
He'll put Kirk in a transporter thing buffer for like 10 years until they catch up. It'll be something like that. Or they'll just not care.
Right. I'm kind of leaning towards that one.
which is probably the more likely approach. Yes. The other thing, obviously, we're obviously getting way ahead of ourselves at this stage, having not even seen the first episode of season 3 yet. But what they have seemed to be doing as a bit of a pattern of behavior on the show is by the time we get to the end of the season, they seem to drop in an original series cast member. Obviously, we got Kirk at the end of season 1, and obviously then we got Scotty at the end of season 2. So does that mean by the end of season 3 that we're likely to get Sulu or Bones or Chekhov dropping into the Enterprise? Do you think?
Can't have Chekhov because he didn't come in till season 2 of the original series, did he? But
think about no. I'll stop you there. Why couldn't Chekhov be like a lower decker? Chekhov could come in Chekhov could come in like Boimler, Mariner, Tendi, Rutherford, or whatever as a lower decker. He's on the Enterprise, but he's working in some lowly job down on deck, whatever, in a Jeffries tube, and he doesn't actually get bridge duty until Kirk's Enterprise.
I think Bones makes most sense to come in. Sulu,
but then you got to kick out Mbenga, don't you? Mbenga's got to do some bad shit to get demoted because he ends up as the night shift doctor.
Yeah, any of these characters would have to come in and basically either replace another character or would have to come in junior to them, like you said, a lower decker sort of thing. And because Sulu again, you'd have to get rid of the gorgeous chick
Mitchell.
They'd have to get rid of her, wouldn't they? So.
Just replacing one Asian character with another Asian character. Something happened to Mitchell,
you'd have to replace.
I think you got to keep Ortigas. Though. I think Ortigas is good value.
Yeah, she's great. She's one of my favorite characters in the series. So even though I couldn't remember her name, I tried to block out.
She overwhelmed you.
I'm useless with names. If you ever watch my channel, you can see me when I'm talking about something. I have to remember a name. Just see me look off to one side. See what people's names are on.
I think if they were to bring in another character at the end of season 3, I mean, logically your mind is gonna go to Dr. McCoy, right? Because he would complete the big 3 of Kirk, Spock, McCoy triad. But I mean, like you said, Mbenga does a lot of heavy lifting on that show, so I don't necessarily think that would be a good show. I do like this Chekhov idea, though, of bringing him in as a lower decker. Although I do not see him as a cartoon character, I think it would be great to have him on in that capacity, because when he first came to Star Trek, there was really no reason to announce him, or there was no explanation given. So yeah, I think the lower decker idea is a great idea. I put my money on that one.
He's got a great Lego hairstyle,
said,
though, for a lower decker. I think that's for an animated character.
Because he just showed up
right
at the start of season 2, and they never said, "Oh, Chekhov, you've just come out of Starfleet Academy and you've just joining the ship with her." So he was just there. There was no explanation. He was on the bridge, so there's no reason why he couldn't already be on the Enterprise, working many decks down, in a room somewhere, and doesn't actually get to do bridge duty for several years until Kirk becomes captain.
You could just bring in McCoy for like a one-off episode as well, though, because like there's the storyline with Mbenga and his daughter in the transporter thing. Maybe that's Dr. McCoy comes in and just like house call. And maybe that's how they resolve that storyline, by bringing in another doctor, bringing in McCoy, and that's how they resolve that story. Maybe
I actually think the most logical. I actually think Sulu. I think the chances of Sulu are probably higher, because I think you can't bring in McCoy without kicking out Mbenga, and it kind of feels like, because of if Chekhov was going to make an appearance, it wouldn't be as a regular character. It would just have to be, it'd have to be, Spock, just go down into the lower depths of the engineering section in that Jeffries tube and Chekhov happens to be there, up to his elbows in whatever. Not, I was going to say grease, but whatever engineering fluid operates, the various different conduits in engineering or whatever. So my thought would be Sulu would probably, because also we did actually see Sulu in the original pilot of Star Trek when Pike was the captain and everything. We had the doctor. What was the old doctor bloke name? What was his name again? We had number 1 and everything, and we had the different ensigns and everything on the bridge. But I'm pretty sure Sulu was there wearing a blue uniform in a briefing room capacity. I'm pretty sure.
I believe that was
Are you fact checking me there, David?
I think that's the second pilot that you're thinking of, but I remember that Sulu in the blue uniform in the briefing room.
Yeah, Sulu.
Boyce.
Maybe I'm thinking of one of the very, very early episodes of I remember, but yeah, he was there, and he was in a blue uniform.
Dr. Boyce.
Oh, here we go. Thank you. Yeah, Mike from the Stellar Sci-Fi Podcast, Stellar One Sci-Fi Podcast has commented. No, Sulu was in the second pilot, not in the cage. That's right. I could remember he was in a blue uniform, and then he was in like a background extra kind of capacity. I thought it might have been the cage, but thanks for that correction, Mike. So that'd be my prediction, at least.
And like you said, they come in at a lower level, don't they? Because Sulu can be doing something else. I mean, Chekhov would have to be about 12.
They work him young.
well, hang on. How old when they brought him into when he was in the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie in 2009? Wasn't Anton Yelchin, who played Chekhov? Didn't he actually say, I am 16 or 17?
17.
17, right?
Yep.
So
he was always the baby bridge, wasn't he? But It's
He was.
that's Boom Bones. Sorry, it's what they've done with Scotty. He's not come in as chief engineer, is he? He's come in under
Under Pellier.
Under
Yeah,
Pellier,
okay.
yeah.
So I mean, that's what they'll do with those. They can introduce, and you know, by the end of season 5, they will have introduced all of these characters in some way, because they just will. I just wonder
Actually,
this season with Pike, whether they are going to end with sort of menagerie, and they are going to end and tile that off, or are they going to go surprise? It's a different universe.
I would love to see Chekhov in this. I really would. Sulu, to be fair, Sulu got his shot in Lower Decks. He did a cameo in Lower Decks. So
That's
let's
true.
see Chekhov.
Actually, Chuck makes a good point in the comments. You could bring in Janice Rand. Because she made quite an appearance in the first half of season 1, but then, as you pointed out in your Balance of Terror review this week, David, that was Balance of Terror, which was episode 14 of season 1, was her last appearance until motion picture.
Yeah. Interesting. We've got loads they can introduce them in, and they will, because I think they. I'm so cynical. I'm so sorry, but they have to bring these things in to appease us Trekkies, and they just have to they have to do these little Easter eggs and things. I think it's a run off from Marvel and doing it over the years. They have to do this to sort of make us try to stop us being so angry. Just like, no, don't worry. We've got a character from the original series. Remember him? It's like,
Yeah.
So I think they will keep doing that.
Exercise in appeasement. Speaking of exercises in appeasement, Jonathan Frakes recently came out. Not.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Not
that there's anything wrong with that.
My sentence. Came out to say, in regards to working on Starfleet Academy.
Jay's lost it.
Sorry, I didn't almost.
Sorry.
No judgments. Yeah.
No judgments. I'll just not put long pauses at the end of my sentences anymore. Jonathan Frakes, in his commentary on having directed, I guess, multiple episodes of Starfleet Academy, which has wrapped their shooting of season 1. That he said that Starfleet Academy is for hardcore Star Trek fans.
Awesome.
Now, do we think he is being completely 100% genuine in this appraisal of the show, or do we kind of feel like this is a little bit of an exercise in damage control because Star Trek fans have just watched Section 31 and they're maybe questioning, the way that maybe that wasn't really for Star Trek fans, So what do we think? Do we think Starfleet Academy, like he said, is going to be for hardcore Star Trek fans? Or do we think it's just sort of going to be a bit of a continuation from Discovery? And, or are we going to get back to basics with this show? What do we think?
Well, I think, Mike, what you said earlier about, with all of it's like a reset almost with Academy now. You've had this is the first class that you've got in 100 years or so,
right.
For the cadets, and it's a whole new world, a whole new galaxy out there. So it may be very much tapping into those roots of Star Trek and those core elements, and it might be a really refreshing change and to explore that in a different setting than we've explored before. So yeah, could be back to basics.
I think kind of on that. I think it will be designed with the hardcore Star Trek fans in mind. And the reason I say that, Jonathan Frakes, by his own admission, says that, oops, sometimes I give a little too much away. Oops, maybe I shouldn't have said this, to the press or to a reporter or something. But according to Jonathan Frakes, he said that there's a couple of things with this show that are going to really make it pop. The first was having actual movie stars as part of the cast, like Holly Hunter and Paul Giamatti. Mm-hmm. Also, he said that the sets, it's one of the largest, if not the largest Star Trek set ever. So I think what they're doing is they're doing their due diligence, they're doing their homework, their research, they're listening to everything that came out of Section 31. And I think my belief is that they are putting something together for the true Star Trek fan.
Fingers crossed. Because I think they let's face it, they do need to regain a few brownie points. And you need to appeal to new audiences, and you got to bring new audiences into Star Trek because all us blokes and Star Trek fans that have been with the show for many, many years, we're not getting any younger. And you sort of need to, you got to keep us happy, but at the same time, you got to do stuff that's going to entice the younger audiences, to recruit in as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think let's face it. I mean, there's so many. You hear so many stories with people saying how Star Trek helped me through difficult parts of my life where I was down, and there's all this crap going on in my life, and whether it was the death of a loved one or parents getting divorced or whatever, and people have said that Star Trek was something that brought a smile to my face, or it brought my family together, or whatever the story was. There's so many stories out there with people who have got stories to tell like that. So I think trying to get back to basics with this new series and actually doing a show, because let's face it, Star Trek has always been about family in terms of the crew being the family.
Sure.
Everybody, having that bond, those bonding the bridge. That was one criticism I always had about Discovery, is that 5 seasons that show ran for, and I couldn't really tell you much at all about most of the bridge crew on that show. Like, they were virtually extras, So I think we need to get back to basics, and actually bond with the characters, and like what Star Trek has always been, and that family dynamic on the bridge and so forth.
That's a critical thing you brought up there, Nick, because I'm with you right there. Like the Discovery cast, I swear I could never remember the bridge crew's name, and that's something that just doesn't happen with me, right? It's like, because you didn't have that connectivity to that family point like you were bringing up. So I'm with you. I think I'm very excited to see a fresh start come from Starfleet Academy, and up until what I read from Jonathan Frakes with the movie stars being in the cast and the larger sets, I mean, it had always, everything I had read to that point had always been, yes, this is going to be targeted towards a younger audience, specifically for the reasons you're laying out, really kind of a recruitment tool. And then I read this, I'm like, hardcore fans, younger audience, maybe a little column A, maybe a little from column B,
Column B.
Yep. I'm excited for it.
A good Star Trek series, that would be a start.
Yeah, and look, as you pointed out, Jay, that I think this Star Trek series, out of any previous Star Trek series, has probably got. They've brought in the big guns with Holly Hunter, Paul Giamatti. I don't think any Star Trek series has had. Obviously, they've brought in. People like Scott Bakula or whatever, for Enterprise and so forth, that would, were big names and so forth, for shows and everything. And obviously, Anson Mount had done a few bits and pieces, and obviously Rebecca Romaine had, were names that had been, in, feature films and so forth before. But yeah, Paul Giamatti, Holly Hunter, bringing Robert Picardo back from Voyager to be the Doctor again, and Tatiana Maslany, who was obviously in She-Hulk, and she said the other day that that she commented that Starfleet Academy, has so much heart.
Right.
And maybe that heart comment that she made about having so much heart is what we're talking about in terms of getting back to that concept of the crew being the family, that family dynamic, that, getting to know the characters, bonding with those characters.
I think, well, there are two things I said that Starfleet Academy has to succeed. because it really will be Secret Hideout's last chance. Season 3 of Strange New World has got to do well. I would actually argue if it doesn't get on the Nielsen rating, at least on the day it's dropped, Skydance will look at that. But Academy really has to succeed. They've spent a lot of money on this show. It really will be their last chance. Skydance will look at that and go, do we trust these guys? But it's got to... one of the things I like, and Jonathan Frakes accidentally dropped, again, like you say, Mike, he accidentally drops things, was that there's a starship, a regular starship in the series. And they've got the set for it and everything that is regularly used. For me, that was always going to be a big problem, because what people were thinking when this first dropped was, well, this is going to be Star Trek 90210. It's going to be a teen angst thing. It's not going to really be Star Trek. It's going to be relationships. And so this is going to be terrible. Them saying that, no, there is a starship. We are going to get out there. We are going to do whatever. Is massively important.
Like a DS9 dynamic, like the DS9 dynamic, how they'd have they'd be on the station, but they'd go off on the Defiant for missions and come back. Probably the same sort of dynamic as the way they did that on DS9.
Well, DS9 didn't really get good, did it, until the Defiant came in.
Exactly.
Guys,
I would speculate too, Jay, that that starship is there just because of DS9. The first couple seasons, they didn't really go anywhere, right? Defiant came on, it became a whole different show. It got exciting. It was fun. The stories were tighter. I mean, sure, you had Ronald D. Moore there, the Klingon guy, doing the whole war effort. Yeah. But I think that ship you're talking about in Starfleet Academy, I think it's there just as a Defiant style type of prop to get everybody off of Earth, doing something in space to make it emulate Trek a little bit.
And they must know as well, as Trekkies, the starships we really like. Saying we love a hero ship. It is important to us. It's a character in the show in itself. And they must look at Picard season 3. And the only thing that they really had criticism against Picard season 3 was the Enterprise G, or the Titan, was that people didn't love it. So they must look at that and go, okay, well, yeah, we cannot have a new series that costs this much money and not have a hero ship in it. We've got to. And that is, I think that's reassuring.
I agree.
I wonder whether the dynamic is, when you think about it, they've done this just recently with Prodigy. Because you think about season 2 of Prodigy, where you had a small vessel with, Starfleet cadets on board, which was run obviously by Janeway, and the EMH was on board and everything, and then you got a bunch of the Prodigy kids or whatever from the Protostar being on board and everything as well. It kind of seems like the dynamic might be something in that sort of ballpark, where we've got the kids coming on board a vessel. You've got obviously because they've actually been very specific to say that Holly Hunter is playing not only the Chancellor of Starfleet Academy, but I think they say Captain and Chancellor or whatever. So she's going to command these off-world, whether you want to call it a field trip or an excursion or whatever, where the students get to training exercises with the students, and they all get on board the ship, and then they go out like the Prodigy kids did on the Voyager A or whatever it was in Prodigy. I mean that worked pretty well in that show. So if it's that sort of ballpark, I think that could be a really entertaining plot element.
Do you think we've seen the ship before, in terms of maybe in Discovery? Was it maybe one of the there was a new Voyager, or do you think they might do a new build that's brand new and it's got, I don't know, anti-child Kelpian scream-proof warp engines or something? What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I just hope it's a good design, because some of those Starfleet ship designs, like we saw with Captain Rayner's ship at the start of season 5 of Discovery. Some of those ships were really ugly. And you just look at them and it's, I don't know, they just didn't do anything for me whatsoever. I would love it if they like had like more of an antique starship or something, like the ship they use for the cadets or whatever is like a bit more of an antique, so they can have not necessarily that antique, but I'm just thinking at least if it was something just that was more along the the lines of the designs of which we'd seen in seasons 2 or 3 of Picard or something. So at least it looks like a Starfleet starship and not like some weird abstract thing with floating nacelles that do. You got to have the 2 nacelles, you got to have the saucer section, and the main engineering hull with the deflector dish kind of configuration.
I think the model makers because obviously merch is a big thing. The Lego models,
absolutely.
They're going, please don't have detached cells. Please.
How does that work on a model? I mean, what are you meant to do? Hang them up on strings or something?
They would be connected by just a bit of see-through clear plastic, I would imagine, which is not
a new ship, just because they will want to sell the model. So there will be a new ship, definitely, 100%.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They just need to design it in a way that's reminiscent, because you have to, because part of part of our collective love of Star Trek is the love of the Star Trek as much as our love is for the captain or the first officer or the chief engineer or the doctor or whatever. The starship is part of the crew.
Yeah.
And this was why in some ways I kind of objected a little bit to the way they finished Picard season 3, where they renamed the Titan the Enterprise G. I felt like I didn't like that, because I felt like the Titan had earned its stripes as a starship that we are going to love, like all of the other Star Trek shows. You get to love the ship that they're on. It takes them on their voyage. It goes through the battles with them, and it's part of the crew, part of the cast. So the
it's
way
established.
they just it's established. So I felt the Titan at the end of Picard had earned its stripes to be there alongside the Enterprise, the Defiant, Voyager, or whatever. And the fact they go, no, we're just renaming it now, it's going to be the Enterprise. It's like, I kind of felt bad for the.
I thought the same thing. I thought the exact.
Yeah.
I'm glad they of course they called it the Enterprise, but I really think it would have had more value if they'd have just left the Titan name on there. Because you're right. I mean, it earned its stripe. It deserved to keep that name, hands down. If they really want to give a ship a shake, if you're talking about a training vessel, and to everyone's point, that's more antique and classic, I say we got introduced to the Star Trek or the Starfleet Fleet Museum in Picard, right? So go get that season 5 NX-01 Enterprise from the Fleet Museum, put it at the Academy for Starfleet Academy, give that new refit look a shake, let's see what it looks like on screen. That'll never happen, but it'd be a fun idea.
But we're going through so many letters of the alphabet. I mean, we're going to be up to Enterprise Z in no time at the rate we're going through these Enterprise versions. It's like, seriously. What happens after Z? You go back to AA, or what sort of?
Yes, it's like
like alphanumeric or something, or what? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
What about on Canucks? Do you know the J is the pizza cutter?
Right.
Pizza cutter. Extra pepperonis with that one.
We haven't seen any other letters, so we haven't seen like a HI. We've basically got HI, haven't we? We haven't seen on canon at least.
Right.
But it kind of felt like they just wasted the F. They wasted the F in Picard, because they were decommissioning it. That was a I thought a good design, but that was completely wasted because I think
didn't they have one that was like in one of those time episodes? It was like it was a future Enterprise in, I think it was one of the Enterprise.
Yeah, that was the pizza cutter, wasn't it? On Enterprise,
that was the pizza cutter.
That was the pizza cutter. The one that when Archer, when Archer, and it had these little spindly little nacelles on it or whatever. Like it was like the. It was like
Let it break as a toy.
The saucer section was enormous. This huge saucer section, and this tiny little stick nacelles that were like little needles. It was very very odd design.
Floating
yeah,
where the nacelle was as well, but no, it was ugly as hell.
Yeah, I agree.
We haven't got an Enterprise in sort of the Discovery era, and at some point in Starfleet Academy they're going to bring an Enterprise in. They just will.
Oh, maybe that's the new ship.
Yeah, but what letter would it be by then? Because we never had an Enterprise in Discovery, so where would they be up to by the time we get to the 32nd century?
Enterprise X, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the timeline for the J was when there was the Xindi War. I'm not sure. That would have been dated.
That was was it like when the temporal Cold War was? I think that was like the 26th, 7th century or something.
Yeah. So we got like another 500 years.
That sounds right. That sounds right.
Yeah. So if we're up to the J, the pizza cutter being J, if we're at the temporal Cold War, by the time we get to the 32nd century, if you're averaging an Enterprise every
26th century,
25 years. So say every 25 years, maybe.
No Federation for a lot big chunk of that. So from the burn onwards, you wouldn't have had a new ship, even though we've got a bunch.
That's true. That's true.
No, I got a problem with Academy. I mean, it's a fundamental issue I have with Academy. There were a load of Starfleet officers in the 32nd century. Where did they go to school? Was it all online?
Maybe it was like they went the kids who went to school during the pandemic lockdown or whatever. They just got homeschooled or whatever.
Yeah, they were all doing it online.
COVID cadets.
COVID cadets. Still, they just didn't have it.
That is a very good point because when you think because the whole burn situation, because they
all crude.
Because Earth wasn't even part of the Federation or whatever. It was like doing its own thing, and that's right.
So
interesting.
Opened a new school, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, we're actually going to learn something." Because how did you guys?
What do you mean I got to sit at a desk? What do you mean I got to be in a classroom? I don't understand this.
Yeah.
Can't I do
what do you mean I have to go
to my iPad?
What do you mean I have to go to school every day of the week and attend classes? What's this nonsense? It's like people, I don't know whether this is like how it is in the US and the UK at the moment, but like there's still people in Australia who's like, oh, can't I work from home on Mondays and Fridays and just come into work on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays because people got so used to working from home so often. Is that still a thing?
What? I have to go to
not really. It's going away quick here, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it probably is now. Yeah,
I work for here, and they've got rid of all our offices, so they can't. They've got nowhere to go. So,
okay.
Yeah, they're like, you come into an office. Where? I'm going to work from home, thank you.
Just to loop back around to what we started with in terms of talking about Secret Hideout and all that sort of stuff, just to finish up on. The only other piece of news which I was going to mention in the show, obviously, it was the fact that it seemed to be implied that that there had been reaching out to Shatner and also Mulgrew about potentially reprising their respective roles as Kirk and Janeway in some capacity for these new shows that are being pitched to Skydance or whatever to try to appease the gods there. So look, it always seemed most logical to me to just do the Star Trek Janeway kind of thing, just following on from the same sort of stuff they were doing in Prodigy, but in a live action capacity. I'm not sure about Shatner. I mean, he's what, 95, 94, 95 now? I think he just had a birthday. No, I think he just turned 94. I think he just had a birthday. I mean, I don't see Shatner as being, even though he's pretty bloody fit and healthy for a 94-year-old, I just don't see him having the resilience to to shoot a 10-part, Star Trek series or something. I think if you're going to bring him back, you could do it into some sort of cameo capacity or whatever. But I just don't know. I mean, I know there was some comment made with him saying he spoke to some writer who had some amazing idea that impressed him or something.
Right.
Yeah, but what do you guys think about this? Do you think this is a viable suggestion?
I think it's desperate. If I'm honest, I think Secret Hideout are going, right, we really want a new contract. What can we do? And somebody's gone, if we get William Shatner to sign on, even to come back for one episode, the people at Skydance will like that.
That's what I was going to say, too. It seems more like a marketing decision to entice Skydance more than anything else, to kind of lock that down. But I would love, personally, to see William Shatner come back. But, I mean, my God, he's 94 years old, and if he does come back in a cameo appearance, to the point he's always made, it's got to be meaningful. It's got to have some kind of impact to the character and to the story. So, I would love to see him, but no, I really.
And the character has died a couple of times.
A couple.
Exactly.
Again, Secret Hideout don't really care about that sort of thing, but because logic, but he is dead, so I don't know how they're going to work around that. But I actually have more issue with the Janeway thing, because I really, at least that would be Prime sort of universe. It would be Legacy sort of timeline. It could be a Voyager A, which is a lovely looking ship from Prodigy. I really think it's a nice ship. So that's cool. But I don't quite see. But I actually don't think Kate Mulgrew will do it. From the sounds of it, when she was on the cruise, she sort of said, it's got to be a good project. It can't just be me coming back to do a vanity project, I think she called it. It's got to be a good idea. So I think, but it just seemed to me that they're just doing anything they can to excite fans. They're almost trying to get us on board. That if Skydance then just go, we're not sure we're going to give you a new contract, that we'll kick off and we'll go, yeah, we want Secret Hideout. And I think if they are doing that, they're horribly reading the room badly. Because I think the bulk of Star Trek fans are more than happy for Alex Kurtzman to never be involved in Star Trek ever again.
Yeah.
So if that's their plan, at most I think they may be. If I was Skydance, I'd be saying, look, we will keep with Skydance, the Secret Hideout, but I would go the Warner Brothers route, which is apparently what they were planning to do, and buy Kurtzman out and give him a movie.
Yeah.
Say, look, go away. We'll keep Secret Hideout the way it is, and we'll turn it into Star Trek Studios or something. Kurtzman, you leave. Go and do a couple of movies. We'll greenlight you. Come pitch us a couple of movies, and we'll be very, very friendly towards you. And we'll greenlight something. Just don't have any of those things to be anything Star Trek.
Yeah. I think if you're going to bring back Shatner in some capacity, you'd have to bring him back in the way they brought him back for that short film.
That was brilliant.
If they had him in doing, however they did Sam Witwer playing Kirk in that Otoy short, if they did that, but with Shatner doing the performance thing,
motion capture,
but then obviously that's going to be quite costly to do, so that you wouldn't be able to do a whole series like that. You could do one episode, but
I'd like to see him in like a one-off episode, but I think he's died. He's died a couple of times, as you said, Jay. And I think we need to move on from that. And there's also a risk is if he is brought back, or if Janeway is introduced, this could be just in desperation, completely stuffed up, and it can really leave a bad taste in the mouth for potentially their final performance in Star Trek. And I think we just got to move on with things. But I mean that clip from last year, or that short from last year, I think that was really innovative, and it was quite emotional, but it wasn't more than just a proof of concept. I don't think you could create a story around that for like a season. I think that's really stretching things a bit.
The other thing too is, like I mentioned, I'd love to see Kirk come back, but there's already been, to your point, David, there's already been finality to the character a couple of times. So if you bring him back, I mean, are you risking damaging that character? Are you tainting Kirk a little bit? I would tend to say you probably would, unless it was an exceptional role for him. Again, love to see him back, but not at the risk.
I mean, he did save the galaxy twice in Generations. He sacrificed himself twice to
people
to
overlook
save
that, right?
Yeah, and I really like the way they handled that in Generations in terms of the farewell for the character. And I think bringing him back, is I think do more to undo that than to benefit it. I think
the death scene in Generations though was very empty.
Yeah, it was okay. I think we need to see, like, Star Trek and the Federation is quite a big thing. They need to stop obsessing about going backwards. For me, it drives me crazy. Not every ship has to be the Enterprise. Not every new series has to be a reimagining of Pike. We've got 3 Pikes now. 3 Kirks, 3 Spocks. It's getting ridiculous. They don't have to do it. This is like Star Wars, how everything happens on Tatooine. It's a bigger universe than that.
Yeah.
It's just like, for the love of God, do a different ship. Do a different thing. That was what annoyed me about Enterprise. Why was it the bloody Enterprise? Why could it have been the Endeavour or something else? Why did they had to do this? Don't worry. I know we're messing with canon here, but it's the NX-01 Enterprise. So don't worry. It's not really.
Right, it's different.
The Proto-Enterprise.
The
Proto-Enterprise.
The Endeavour. Or Challenger or something like that. If they wanted to, like, pay homage to the Challengers or something. That would have been bad taste. But do you know what I mean?
There was the Columbia was the sister ship or whatever that they actually had in
Columbia. They didn't need to call that Enterprise. So I think they made a tactical error immediately with Enterprise. But anyway, there is this thing, isn't it, that they do a remake. So we got the J.J. Abrams picking Kurtzman and Star Treks, and now we're doing it again. Just don't. All we want is a spaceship with a crew that we like.
Yes.
Going up and exploring
a sexy looking starship with a great crew that are people who are likable people who we want to watch week to week, week in, week out.
And
the crew get proper airtime.
Yeah,
and the crew actually get airtime so that we actually know who they are. We know their names. We don't go 5 seasons without knowing barely remember what their names were.
Now, come on.
Yeah,
New Worlds, we know who Pike is because we know that he has got big hair and he cooks. We do know something else,
and has a high hair gel cost. Yeah,
he's got a girlfriend he meets every so often. We must know something else about the Pike character.
Rhymes with Spike.
Oh, really? Ortega. She's got ADHD.
A little bit.
No, again, they don't. It's that 10 episode thing, isn't it? It really is.
It is, and look, and I think the 10 episode format definitely works if you're doing a season of episodes that is one story, serialized story that spans 10 episodes, and each episode is to be continued. Then the 10 episode format works well for that.
Yeah.
If you're doing a show like Strange New Worlds that's getting back to the roots of Star Trek and doing self-contained stories, you need more than 10 episodes, I feel, to get a good insight into that crew, that team, whatever. Personally, I think Strange New Worlds should be doing, between 13 and 16 episode seasons, not 10 episode seasons, because they're self-contained stories.
And put it this way as well. 5 seasons of Discos, 50 episodes. We're probably going to get 5 seasons of Strange New Worlds, 50 episodes. That's 2 seasons of TNG.
Right.
And how long did it take TNG to find its legs? 2 seasons.
Yeah.
2 seasons.
DS9, 2 seasons. Voyager, 2 seasons. It's like these shows do take a little bit of time to, to grow and evolve and get to, where they are.
But Jay, we're living in a world where people's attention spans are less than that of goldfish. You know,
I know.
it's like we're swiping our phones, and you know, we can't stay attentive to anything for any great length of time.
No show will get 2 seasons to, especially not when a season costs $100 million to produce. No show is ever going to go. You know, Netflix is not there going after 2 seasons. Well, it's not quite working yet, but let's see how the next one goes. That's not happening. They will produce the season, and as long as it gets on Nielsen rating, you'll get another season. If it doesn't, you won't. And that's
let me pose this question. Would you guys be interested in watching a Star Trek series if they said, okay, we're going to do a self-contained Star Trek series like Strange New Worlds, but we're going to radically cut the budget so that the production value isn't feature film standards like Strange New Worlds is on week to week, but we're going to do, 16 or 18 episode seasons. So we're going to take the same budget that we'd normally do 10. We'll stretch it out and we'll do 16 or 18 or something episodes, but they're not going to look as polished and flashy, and maybe the sets won't be quite as fancy and everything. Would you be willing to, do you think audiences would be willing to accept that, or they'd go, oh no, this looks crap now, I'm not watching this? Or do you think they would go, no?
And shots of the Enterprise spinning around with torpedoes going, because they did that first season and people liked it, so they keep doing it over and over again. We'll get that though, won't we? Still, because,
you'll get repeat battle sequences like in DS9. Like that. You'll probably get a bit of that happening.
They'll reuse shots
didn't we
or
see?
Something. Yeah.
Didn't we see that? Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite shows, growing up, that all they did was recycle shots, was Battlestar Galactica. But that was constantly just reuse footage, it was a great show.
Over and over again.
It was a great show.
All the great shows did it.
But I think in the here and now, and Rick Berman actually pointed this out years ago. He said, making Star Trek: The Next Generation, the challenge becomes that we have a large population of Star Trek fans and Star Wars fans that have kind of been spoiled by the special effects of the shows and the movies, specifically the movies. So I think if the story was good, I would watch a show that's on a less of a budget, maybe not so many effects, right? But would everybody do it? There's an expectation level is where I'm going with this. I think now the expectation level, when you have these cinematic style shows going on, like Discovery, that the expectation is now there. If you go back from that, if you scroll down from that, I think you might actually lose some interest in the show.
Because what's the budget of a Strange New Worlds or Discovery? What are they, about 8, 9? Was it about
9 million?
About 9 million an episode or something?
Yeah, it averages about the average is about 9 million an episode. Picard was about $11 million an episode, but I think that was mostly Patrick Stewart's wages.
Wages, yeah. And what were they making? Does anyone know what budget they made the Orville on?
3.
Well, see, I'd be willing to take that hit. I don't think the Orville looked
closer to 6, but the first 2 seasons of Orville was 2. Well, another good example is The Expanse. That was done of an average $4 to $5 million an episode. I know it's a few years ago now. Foundation. 10 episodes of The Foundation cost less than $50 million to make.
Yeah, okay.
But it hasn't got the CGI and stuff. It hasn't got CGI characters. I mean, it's got like space battles and things like that. But it's got the effects, like the Gorn. The Gorn are incredibly expensive to have on screen. It's like So, but yeah, I mean, they could half the budget to get in line with sort of these. And to be honest, Trekkies, we like them sitting on the battle or whatever, talking to each other. We quite like that. We don't need to have.
You just maybe we just don't do an episode with the Gorn. Maybe we just go back to the Klingons or the
episodes. Yes. But this is why this season takes a year post production. TNG was written, filmed the next day, and then on our screens within about 5 weeks. But now it takes post production on these seasons take a year.
Yeah.
Another reason why it's 18 months between seasons. The Orville is a good example, actually, to be fair, because that is far more character driven. It's not, and they don't have the budget for it. They it's $6 million with New Horizon. 6, 7. I think it averaged at 6 to 7, but $6 million. First season, $3 million an episode. It's nothing. And how much of that was Seth MacFarlane's wages? So.
But I think that at the end of the day, I think the message that we're getting back to is just, is getting back to basics. That seems to be the motto, I think, of all of this conversation, just to, go back to the origins of Star Trek storytelling and, give us something closer to, those Star Trek series that we all, grew up on with and absolutely love and take that recipe, and update it. But I think that's the way to go if they want to, keep all of the historic fans, and also, face it, we all got into it for a reason, and obviously there must be something right about the formula. You don't go changing a recipe if it's, if it's tried and tested. Just, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah. And if you make, I know Alex Kurtzman says Star Trek is dying because us fans apparently are all decrepit and on our last legs. If you make good Star Trek, they will come. You will
absolutely,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll get on the life support system just to stay around that bit longer for it. Yeah.
When he said that, when the actor said that, I'm like checking my pulse. I'm thinking, how old am I? I thought I was only in my 40s. What the hell?
Well, if I can figure out a way to tap in from the afterlife after I'm gone, then they'll never lose me. They'll never lose me.
Yes, absolutely.
My EMH will be watching this for years to come.
Right.
That's right.
JMH.
Well,
JMH.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of the stream for today. Thanks to everybody for coming along in the comments and everything, and being part of the show. I appreciate everyone coming along to watch today. And I'd like to thank Mike and Jay, who have been there on the show for the first time. Thanks, guys, for coming along.
Wow, Mike! That's spectacular. Why does he get fireworks? We don't.
Fireworks.
I don't know what I did to deserve all that, but I'll take it.
Wow, that's incredible. Jeez.
So thanks guys for coming along. Much appreciate being part of the show today.
Thank you for having me. I really a lot of fun. All you guys, a lot of fun.
It's been fantastic. I'll be love to have you guys on again for a future stream. And of course, David, thank you again if anyone hasn't seen David's review, very in-depth, deep dive in the classic TOS episode Balance of Terror. We just posted that video yesterday, so be sure to go along and check out his very comprehensive review of that.
We're running bets at the moment to see. We're running bets to see how long it's going to stay up on YouTube before it gets taken down again, like the last one. But yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm always having dramas with using clips and stuff and copywriting issues and it is. It is. But I think you already said you already started working on your next one, which I think is going to be the Inner Light. Is that right?
Correct. Yep. So we've already got started on that.
Next one will be Inner Light. Yes, but hopefully, hopefully we get some Star Trek, some new Star Trek news hitting us soon, so I can actually get some new videos happening. So hopefully we'll get something going on soon. But thanks everybody for coming along. Live long and prosper and everything, and we'll catch you along for the next stream. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Yeah.